Hey friends, what up? Ladies and gentlemen, we have some brand new patch notes fresh off the printing press. I just got home. I was out with my family. We were out at the pumpkin patch with my little niece. But I heard there were some notes. So I rushed home, dropped off my family. No, I'm kidding. But I just did get home. So I figured we put out a video. There's some massive amounts of class changes coming in, as you can see. So I figured I'd go over them, give you my thoughts on them, and we'll see where we lay. As you guys know, the anniversary patch just came out, so things are already absolutely crazy. But we'll see what the developers are starting to do and what direction we're going to be going. So here we go, without further ado. We regularly make combat design adjustments based on gameplay data and feedback from players on class performance. With scheduled weekly maintenance in each region, October 30th in this region, we'll make the following changes to classes that are over and underperforming. So some changes here to Blood Death Knight. Looks like they get some damage increases. And specifically some changes here to Sand Lane as well. Doesn't really impact PvP that much, but some balance changes. Buffs for Death Knights. Blood Death Knights specifically. Balance. The goal of these changes are to increase single target damage and even out the power of talents and balance the Spectre to provide as much flexibility to players as possible. We want the power of Goldrin to be an effective single target pick, and we'd like talents like Touch of the Cosmos and Hail of Stars to be more competitive than the other options. All right. Such alignment and Incarnation Chosen Loon once again reset at the end of raid encounters. Starfall damage increased. Star Surge damage increased. It does not apply in PvP. Star Fire damage increased by 5%. Wrath damage increased by 10%. Shooting Stars and Crashing Stars damage increased. Sunseeker Mushroom grow 12% less often. Touch of the Cosmos chance to proc increased to 15% for Wrath and 22% for Starfire. Power of Goldrin's damage increased by 25%. Does not apply to PvP combat. Rattle the Stars increases Starfall and Star Surge damage by 8%, down from 10. New Min and Half Moon damage reduced by 5%. Call the Elder Druid's duration increased to 15%, Call the Elder Druid's duration increased to 15 seconds, was 10. That's for Restoration Druid. Dream of Cenarius now causes Wrath and Shred to transfer 100%, was 50% of their damage done into healing. Oh, wow. And Starfire and Swipe transfer 50% of their damage done into healing, was 33. So they actually buffed Dream of Cenarius, so Wrath will convert more damage into healing. Interesting. We're looking to increase the playability of Dream of Cenarius, as the window for Heart of the Wild is a bit too short to be meaningful, and the upside of the talent is not yet worth it. Okay, there you go. Beast Mastery Hunter. Here we go. There are some niche situations where players might want to gain Trick Shots or Beast Cleave for more damage from Bleak Powder in single target. Black Powder is meant to complement AoE situations, not incentivize the usage of AoE in single target situations. Dark Ranger, Bleak Powder no longer damages its primary target. Pack Leader, Frenzied Tear Proc chance reduced to 10%, was 20. Pack Leader, Vicious Hunt damage reduced to 10%. Okay, Barb Shot damage reduced by 25%. Stomp damage increased by 50%. Multi-shot damage increased by 100%. Explosive Venom now procs at 3 stacks, was 5, and will appropriately apply Serpent Sting to enemies regardless of the distance from the caster. Okay. Beast Mastery Hunters in PvP are really good right now, so I wonder how these changes will end up working out. I think Marks Hunters are really good in PvP right now as well. Keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, while I'm reading these are all PvE changes, right? So until we get down to here, these are all just changes that are for PvE, and basically you just get lucky or not if you get buffed, essentially. So we'll see what ends up happening. Marksmanship Hunter, Dark Ranger, Black Arrow damage reduced. Dark Ranger, Bleak Powder damage increased. Dark Ranger, Shadow Surge damage increased. Sentinel, Symphonic Arsenal damage increased by 15%. Mistweaver, all healing increased by 6%, and that is sticking in PvP. Awakened Jadefire now causes Spinning Crate Kick to transfer 110% of the damage done, was 90. Jadefire Teachings now increases Ancient Teachings by an additional 160%. Rushing Jade Wind damage increased by 150%, and Rushing Winds now increases Renewing Mist healing by 100%. Okay. Yu'lon's Whisper healing increased by 400%. Jade Bond now increases Mastery Gust of Mist healing by 20%, was 60. We're excited that Chi-Ji Mastery build exists and is powerful in the right conditions, but numerically its output has been above where we're comfortable. We're decreasing the effectiveness of the build without breaking the cooldown reduction gameplay to keep the feel the same and compensating baseline to shrink the difference between this high-end outpost and regular gameplay. Okay. Holy Paladin's mana has been plentiful enough to use Beacon of Virtue more than we would like. We would like to use Beacon of Virtue to influence mana decisions more heavily. Beacon of Virtue now costs 5% mana, was 4. Holy Shock now costs 2.8, was 2.6. Okay, so a little bit of mana nerfs there for Paladin, not really that big of a deal. Discipline Priest, Powered Radiance healing increased by 20%. Flash healing increased by 15%. Premonition of Piety increases healing done by 20%. Primitive Care increases atonement duration by 4 seconds, was 3. So that seems pretty good for Discipline Priests, who are already not in too bad of a spot. Psychic Link now causes direct damage to inflict 30%. Now causes direct damage to inflict 30% of damage dealt to a target affected by Vampiric Touch. Okay. Assassination, Master Assassin, Critical Strike, chance granted during the effect reduced to 20%. Elemental Shaman. Okay, we got a bunch of Elemental Shaman stuff here. With all the changes to Elemental and Enhancement Shamans in patch 11.05, some changes were performing better beyond our tuning goals. We're adjusting several talents and abilities to reduce their overall power. Ancestor's Chain Lightning damage increased to 40%, not applied in PvP combat. Ancestor's Lava Burst damage increased by 15%, does not apply in PvP combat. This is all for Farseer. Ancestor's Elemental Blast damage increased by 15%, so these don't matter in PvP. Stormbringer Arc Discharge now grants 1 instant cast Lightning Bolt or Chain Lightning, was 2. Big nerf. Voltaic Surge now increases Earth Shock and Chain Lightning damage by 5%, was 15. Echo Chamber now increases the damage of Elemental Overload by 20%, was 40%. Ascendance now increases the damage of Elemental Overload by 100% while active. Preeminence now increases haste by 20% while Ascendance is active, was 25. Ice Sphere now increases Frost Shock damage by 200%. So Ice Sphere got buffed. They nerfed the haste with Ascendance, and they also nerfed the Ascendance. So this is like the Mastery Elemental Shaman that I was playing. If you guys watch one of my more recent YouTube videos, they just kind of, they stabbed that build a little bit. Probably necessary, but I guess I got to go haste again. Enhancement. With all the changes to Elemental Enhancement Shamans in patch 11.05, some changes were performing beyond our tuning goals. We're adjusting several talents, blah, blah, blah. Lightning Bolt damage reduced by 10%, not applied in PvP. Chain Lightning damage reduced, not applied in PvP. Stormbringer Tempest damage reduced, not applied in PvP. Restoration. Ancestor Chain Lightning damage increased by 40%, not applied in PvP, not applied in PvP. Okie dokie. The only thing I'll say about this one is like this build kind of relied on you playing a lot of Mastery. And now that this is nerfed so bad right here, now that this is nerfed so bad, I feel like this is one of the things, just as like a little side note, is one of the things that frustrates me is like when you go from needing haste as a main stat and then a new patch and a new build comes out and you change all your gear to Mastery and then it gets nerfed in 1 week, and then what, you have to go back to haste again. It's like, it becomes expensive for enchants and gems and stuff like that. And I just wish there was a simpler way after you commit to like reforging and recrafting your gear and stuff like that. Like, I don't know. This is a side note. I feel like, yeah, it's annoying. I don't know if any of you guys are feeling that pain. You guys feeling the pain of wanting to try new specs and having to get new gear and re-enchant and stuff like that? Because, yeah, it's definitely a crit. Warlocks. We're increasing the throughput of all Warlock specialization to make more each more competitive with other classes in both single-target and multi-target situations. In particular, for Demonology, this means reverting the reduction of demonic core generation to help with their overall mobility. We need to continue to monitor the performance of each specialization and make further adjustments where needed. So Wither damage was increased, not applied in PvP. This is not applied in PvP. This is not applied in PvP. So all the buffs to Affliction, not applied in PvP. However, for Demonology Warlock, Dreadstalker is applied in PvP. Hand of Gul'dan is applied in PvP. Oh my god, Grimoire Fell damage increased by... Dude, Dreadstalkers have a 100% chance to regenerate a... These are massive buffs to Demo. Big buffs. And not only that, Destro's getting insane buffs too. Chaos Bolt damage increased by 10%. Immolate damage increased by 25%. Incinerate damage increased by 20%. Conflag damage increased by 25%. Not affected in PvP. That's crazy. These are big buffs. These are the biggest buffs so far to Demo and Destro. I actually already think Demo is not that bad, and it's getting buffed. And I also don't think Destro is that bad, and it's getting buffed. So Demo and Destro Warlocks, congratulations. Yep. Let's see, warriors. Warriors. Execute damage increased for all warriors. Colossus, demolish, single target damage increased. Okay. Slayer, reap the storm damage increased. Not a flat. Okay, so they didn't. Reap the storm is not happening, but Slayer strike damage increased by 15%. Mortal strike damage increased by 15%. Overpower damage increased by 15%. Dreadnought damage increased by 15%. Cleave damage. All right, so more arms warrior buffs. Okay. Rampage damage increased. Bloodbath damage increased. Bloodthirst damage increased. Mountain Thane, lightning strike damage increased. Slayer strike damage increased. And this one does not affect PvP. And this one, whatever prop. But yeah, big damage buffs here with Execute, as well as many of the abilities for Fury and Arms getting overall buffs. We can look at player versus player now. These are the changes that are specifically for PvP. So far in these general notes, the biggest winners are 100% Demo, Destro, Arms, and Fury. And Disc a little bit. All right, balance. Fixed issue with Frenzy Regeneration was being reduced more than intended. It should now correctly heal for 5% every second. Was 3, so they buffed Frenzied Regen. Rejuvenation and Wild Growth healing increased by 20%. Berserk Incarnation, Avatar of Ashame, now increases damage by 10%, was 15. So they actually nerfed Berserk, good. And they also nerfed King of the Jungle, which is good too. So, so it was 20% bonus healing that you got from King of the Jungle. The whole, basically a majority of the game, you're just getting 20% healing from all sources, which is crazy. And now it's significantly worse. It's 9%. So good nerf. I think that really, I think these are actually really good ways to nerf Feral. I think Incarn was a little bit too strong. I think this bonus healing was a little too strong. So I think that's, these are, I like these changes. I don't think it's going to kill Feral, but I think it's a good way to adjust it. All right, here we go. Hunter, Beast Mastery. Dark Ranger, Bleak Powder damage reduced by 30%. Dark Ranger, Withering Fire's additional Black Arrow. So they nerfed Beast Mastery Hunter a little bit. And they also nerfed Marksmanship Hunter, specifically Dark Ranger. Monk, Jadefire Empowerment, not causes Crackling Jade Lightning to chain to 2 additional enemies, was 4 in PvP combat. So you're not going to be able to... So you're still going to get good healing from the Crackling Jade, but it's not going to be an instant lay on hands when you're cleaving pets and stuff like that. This is a very good change, in my opinion. I think, like, the Crackling Jade Lightning converting damage into healing it felt balanced when you're hitting 1 or 2 targets, but it felt completely imbalanced when you're hitting 4 targets, like completely overpowered. So I think this is a good change. Personally, as someone who likes Mystery Monk, Paladin, Herald of the Sun, Blessing of Anshi now increases healing of Holy Shock by 150%. Great nerf. Herald of the Sun, Eternal Flame healing decreased by 10%. Great nerf. Lightsmith, Blessing Assurance now increases Crusader Strike damage by 40% in PvP, was 120%. Okay. Word of Glory healing decreased by 10%. Mana generation decreased by 25% in PvP combat, was 20%. So they nerfed their mana. They just buffed their mana and they're nerfing it now. Blessing of Summer now transfers 12% healing into damage, was 18. They nerfed Blessing of Summer. Hammer of Wrath damage increased. Judgment damage increased. So they buffed Judge and Hammer. Crusader Strike. So they buffed Judge, Hammer, and Crusader Strike. So Paladins are getting more damage. But they're slightly nerfing Avenging Crusader. So interesting. So they're going the route of basically nerfing some of the healing of Paladin. I think they'll still be good, but they're buffing their damage, which is good. And they're slightly nerfing their mana gen, which I think is good. Obviously, we saw a ton of Paladins at the high end, so I think these feel like not the worst nerfs. I feel like it's going to be okay, but we'll have to wait and see. Discipline. We'd like to make some adjustments to Discipline hero talents to make Woodweaver slightly more rewarding, since it requires a lot of cast time. Woodweaver increases Atonement healing by 30%. Wow. Premonition of Solace reduces damage taken by 10%, was 15. Okay, Premonition of Solace absorption decreased by 15% in PvP. Holy Renew healing increased by 20%. Prayer Mending healing. I think I'm going to make a Holy Priest. I feel like Holy Priests are going to almost be at that point where they're not bad. So I think that's going to be my next healer that I make. I want to make a Priest and I want to play Holy because I think it'll be okay. Shadow. The following notes changes result in Void Leech healing for a significant reduced amount in PvP, but for similar amounts as before outside of PvP. Void Leech heals every 3 seconds. Healing increased to 4% of max health. Void Leech healing reduced to 2% of max health in PvP combat. Collapsing void damage reduced by 10% in PvP. So a few Shadow Priest nerfs there. Sentence now increases the damage of elemental overload by 25% while active in PvP. Was 75%. That seems like a huge nerf. Isn't that a huge nerf? Like, that seems massive. Like this now increases the damage of elemental overload by 100% while active. Was 150, so it got like double nerfed. That's interesting. Totemic Whirling Earth now increases Flame Shock direct damage by 150% in PvP. Was 300%. Okay. Restoration Healing Wave, healing increased by 15%. Healing Surge increased by 15%. So rest of shamans are getting some buffs. And then Slayer Culling Cyclone now increases Blade Storm damage by 20% per stack. Slam damage increased by 40% in PvP combat. Colossus Smash damage increased by 60% in PvP combat. Culling Cyclone now increases Blade Storm damage by 20%. All right, so Arms Warriors and Fear Warriors getting some buffs. Shadow Priest nerfs. Elemental Shaman, Enhancement Shamans getting nerfed. Holy Priest getting buffed. Void Weaver getting buffed for disc. Holy Paladin getting some nerfs, but some damage buffs, so just changes. And then rest of Druids aren't really getting anything. And yeah, I think the biggest winners of this patch are Arms Warriors, Fury Warriors, Demo Locks, Destro Locks, Holy Priests, and yep, that's pretty much it. Hunters got some nerfs. Interesting. So I guess we'll see where that leaves us. At this point, I do like the idea of like trying to make the healers a little bit more even, and hopefully we see more things than just like paladins and disc priests in the tournament for the most part. But yeah, interesting. What do you guys think about the changes? Are these good changes? Are they bad changes? What are your thoughts, my friends? I'd love to know. If you guys like the video, and I'll see you guys in the stream if you guys want to come hang out. Bye-bye.